I'm Tara Duncan of the Arizona Game and Fish Department. Welcome to another episode of Arizona Wildlife Views. If you love game meat, hold on. If you're a little bit skeptical, we're going to change your mind. Plus, it's the 20th anniversary of the reintroduction of condors to Arizona. We'll have an update on how they're doing. And later, Lee's Ferry, a magical place where the fish bite and the scenery takes your breath away. We've got all this and more coming up on Arizona Wildlife Views.
Arizona Wildlife Views is brought to you by the sale of hunting and fishing licenses and the Heritage Fund, lottery dollars working for wildlife. Some projects made possible by the Sportfish and Wildlife Restoration Fund.
He's a chef and journalist whose passion for hunting inspired him to write the best-selling game meat cookbook, Buck Buck Moose. We like to think of him as the Julia Child of game meat cooking. Let me introduce you to Hank Shaw.
Basically, this is the young growing tip, just like mustard. Absolutely just like a mustard green.
Hank Shaw is a hunter, angler, gardener, and cook. He's also a highly experienced forager. He can often be found looking for greens that you and I might mistake for weeds.
If you look real close, it bears a real strong resemblance to broccolini. Broccoli rabe is another name for it.
Facts like these and great tips on cooking everything from venison to duck and quail can be found on his James Beard award-winning food blog.
There's a fair bit of recognition because that set of awards are to the food world what the Oscars are to film. And it allowed me to talk to food people and talk to them about this part of that world.
And just like an actor who gets a bounce from an Oscar win, Hank Shaw's street cred has increased by leaps and bounds. In addition to writing his blog, he travels the country teaching the proper way to prepare game meat to those who come out to his cookbook signings.
I feel that lots and lots of people are interested in taking control of their own food chain. It gives you some kind of deep meaning in something as simple as a steak. Because this steak has a story. It's not something that you took out of cellophane and don't even think about, and if you screw it up, you'll just go buy another. Well, you can't just go get another deer tag. You're going to care about every single piece of meat that comes off that deer because they're precious. And food needs to be more precious these days. And I'm not talking pinky in the air with foams or anything like that. I'm talking about food that has meaning.
This former journalist, food writer, and restaurant cook has a diverse following where you'll find the young, the old, vegetarians, meat lovers, and the conservation-minded. His honest food philosophy has fans lining up regularly to buy his successful game and fowl cookbooks, because Hank's books are more than just a compilation of recipes.
What I try to do, and what I'm really trying to get more people to do, is take control of what they feed themselves and their families. If you think about it, every animal that's around us knows how to feed itself, except us. All I'm asking people to do is grab some piece of the wild world, you know, fishing or foraging or hunting or something like that, and make it part of your family's culture. And make it something that is part of the rhythm of your year. And you can still, you know, have a perfectly, completely, totally modern life. Find time to get out and be in the wild world. That's the message.
Some people say game meat is an acquired taste. Lucky for us, Hank Shaw has a recipe that's as delicious with game meat as anything you'd bring home from the grocery store.
Hi, Hi, my name is Hank Shaw. I am the author of Hunter, Angler, Gardener, Cook. I write cookbooks for a living. My latest one is called Buck Buck Moose. And as you might imagine, it is all about deer and elk and antelope and caribou and basically anything that's got antlers. So I'm here at the Ben Avery Center here in Arizona. And I've been given this lovely piece of mule deer doe backstrap that I'm going to clean up. And then I'm going to put it into portions and then cook it on this grill here with a few things that are very special to Arizona. We've got chili piquin, which is the wild chili that grows on the Mexican border here. Got key limes, got a little olive oil, and then I brought one thing from my house in California. This is a native California white sage. It's a same, just like your garden sage, but a lot more powerful. I'm just gonna throw that all together and make some good food. So I've got this little paring knife, which works really well in tight spots. And then I've got my trusty old hickory stiff-sided boning knife. And a boning knife is obviously to take meat off bones, but it also has a very, very sharp blade on the end here and allows me to do some good work to take silver skin off of meat. So I'm just gonna clean this up. So a backstrap is a backstrap is a backstrap. So all deer have them. But a lot of people will keep their meat just like this, and what you see is you've got a seam here and a seam here, and then you've got that silver skin on the back. All of that has to be taken off. And the first thing I do is I don't even pick up the knife, I just use my fingers to take what's called the chain off. And the chain is this end right here. And it's all it is connected by silver skin. So you can just run your finger in it, and you see it'll come off just like that. And you have your knife at hand in case you need it, but a lot of this work just comes off by hand. And that a lot of good butchery is done with your hands and not with a knife. You're working with the seams of the animal. It's all very trendy now in the big cities. I call it seam butchery, and it's from France and blah, blah, blah. But a lot of us who have been hunting for decades, this is just how we do it. The silver skin here, normally I either throw it out, but you can also throw it into the stock pot. It adds a little bit of flavor to your stock. So it's one little tip that you can use to make your venison go a little farther in the kitchen. So I've got this now, getting cleaner. You've got this edge here, and all you're doing is just cleaning things up. A perfect backstrap has no internal tissue in it at all. It's one piece of meat. It would be a ribeye if it was a piece of beef. The next thing I do is you can do one of two things. You can take off the silver skin in one big fell swoop, or you can cut into lengths and take it off as you do. What I like to do is leave it on if I'm not eating the meat right away. And the reason you do that is because after this has been in the freezer and thawed out, all of the silver skin will come off the animal much, much easier. And that's a little pro tip for you. It also protects that piece of the meat against freezer burn. So I don't need to cook this whole length right now, but as you can see, it's maybe 4 inches wide, which is pretty standard width for a backstrap. A lot of guys will cut these into like little medallions, just like that. And a little medallion like that, I don't like that at all. Because what happens is you have too much surface area on the grill to overcook that meat. And you never want to cook this past medium. So now, how do you cook it? You have a nice clean piece of backstrap. Well, what do you do first? You want it to actually come to room temperature. It's the easiest way to avoid what's called black and blue. And black and blue is a style of steak that some people like. It is charred on the outside, but still cool in the center. Some people really, really like that. I'm not so much a fan. I rather like medium rare, and I'll tell you how to get to medium rare in a minute. So, what you want to do is you want to give the meat a little bit of an oil bath. Any kind of fat will do, preferably a oil thing that's open. Any kind of fat will do, but I'm using grapeseed oil here. And grapeseed oil is a really good thing to use because it has a very high smoke point. You could use canola oil, that's another good choice. You can use pretty much anything, but if you use a fat that has a low smoke point, like extra virgin olive oil or butter or lard, the problem is it'll burn and torch. You don't want that. You want something that will convey heat. Now, why do I put oil on it even though it's going to go on an open grill? The reason is because if I didn't have oil on it, what's going to happen is the moisture that's in this meat is going to steam out. And it's not going to grill as nicely as it would if it does have oil, because oil actually allows the surface temperature of that meat to go higher. You do this with a roast in the oven as well. It also makes it not stick on the grill, and it also gives me a surface that is going to hold the salt better. So salt it, more than you think you need to. Really get it salty, just like that. And it's more than you think you'd need. It looks like it's going to be over salted, but it's not. So this is all you do. All you want to do is let it sit and have a little oil on it and a little salt and let it sit and be ready to rock. Why not a spice rub? Why not a marinade? Why not black pepper even? The answer to all of that is one, a spice rub or black pepper is going to burn. It's going to hit this high heat and it's going to burn and it's going to char and you're going to get a bitter flavor from all of that. The thing about a marinade, well, could you marinate it? Sure, you could, but a marinade will never penetrate more than about a 1/16 of an inch into the meat. So on a big round piece of meat like this, it's a very, very limited utility. Do you pick up some flavor? A tiny bit. But to me, it's not worth it because the acid in the marinade, and that's what's different between a marinade and a brine. A brine is salt, and that will get all the way to the center through osmosis. A marinade is acid, and it will not. A marinade, all it will do is penetrate the very surface of that meat and make it mushy. It gives the impression of being tender, but it's not. So do I use them at all? Sure, I use them for flank steaks. I use them for very thin pieces of meat, like a cutlet or a skirt steak or something that's very thin and narrow. And then it works well, but not for a backstrap. We're gonna use flavorings, but we're gonna do it after it cooks so it doesn't burn. All right, so we've got clean grill grates. We've got some nicely salted meat. And what do? You put it on the grill at an angle. So my grates are going this way. I'm gonna put it on at a 45-degree angle. Why? Nice grill marks. Everybody likes nice grill marks. And what you want to see is the crosshatch. And so you don't want to necessarily have your crosshatch as like a tic-tac-toe board on your backstrap. You want to have it at an angle. All you do is you let it sit. You let it grill until it's done. So it's going to take a solid 6 to 8 minutes on this side, and then we're going to flip it. At some point, you'll want to flip it. Now, when you've got nice grill marks, you don't necessarily want to flip it over and over again, but it's not going to hurt it. So at some point, you're going to want to test, are we done yet? And the easiest way to do it is to use your hands. And you feel the piece of meat, and you don't want to feel the piece of meat on a crusty part because that's artificially stiff. You want to kind of feel the interior to see what level of doneness it is. And there's a particular way that you're feeling for it, and it's the finger test for doneness. Now, some of you already know about this, but for those of you who don't, you do it like this. You hold your hand out, and this pad of your thumb. And if you just press it like that, you feel that? That's what raw meat feels like. Now just touch your thumb to your forefinger. Touch the same pad again. And if you do that, it's a little bit tougher. That's what rare meat feels like. Now go to your middle finger. That's a little firmer. That's what solid medium feels like. That's as far as you should ever take a backstrap. Go one more. You see how you still got some give in it? It's medium well. And you kind of messed it up. Just for the hell of it, now touch your pinky. See how rock hard that is? You just made cat food. So all right, so I've felt this out, and we're now at we're medium rare, looking at medium. So you take it off the grill and let it rest. Always let a piece of meat like this rest. Because what's going on right now is in the interior of the meat, it's so hot that all the molecules are zipping around like this. And if I were to cut into it, there would be a gusher of yummy venison juices that would flow right out right now. And you want to keep as much of that in the meat as possible. So you want to let this rest, and now, if you have that flavor rub or that spice mix, or in our case, black pepper, now is when you put it on. I'm just going to grind some black pepper over it. And you kind of want to do it on the table that you're going to cut, because all of this extra black pepper, as I cut, it's going to mix with the juices that do come out of the meat, and you're going to end up with a kind of a sauce just on your cutting board. And what are we going to add to that? We're going to add a little bit of chopped up wild sage. Just kind of sprinkle it on there. Kind of get it all around. You don't need too much, it's real strong stuff. And similarly strong on these little teeny chili pekins. You just crack them, kind of mix them over. Get those delicious, nice seeds. Oh, by the way, touch your eyes after this. It's pretty cool, do it. And these limes will go on right at the end. All right, so now the meat has rested and it's time to cut it. So we ended up a pretty solid medium. So here you go. It's Arizona mule deer with black pepper, wild sage, wild chilies, and a little bit of key limes. It's all you really need. You don't need to sauce it up too dramatically. Simple is best, and it's all ingredients from around here. So enjoy.
Back in 1996, Condor number 50 took to the air as the first California condor to fly free again in Arizona, thanks to a captive breeding program that has brought them back from the brink of extinction.
You know, when you consider that there were 22 individuals in 1982, and today there are over 400 birds in total, the species has by far and away been saved from extinction, but now we're to the point where we have more birds in the wild than we have in captivity. That's a real turning point for a recovery effort.
But on this windy day in 2016, these raptors aren't quite ready to take flight.
Do they ever take flight?
Nope.
No, they're just still sitting up there someplace.
Joke's on us.
Yeah, I moved where people can at least see.
I'm amazed every year that we have, you know, a couple hundred people drive, whatever, 5 hours from Phoenix or from Salt Lake. We've had people come from the other end of the country. We had people last year from Florida. And so to make the trek here to celebrate National Public Lands Day and the California Condor Recovery Program, to be able to see a condor in the wild and participate, if you will, in one of the most endangered species recovery programs in the world, I guess that's the draw. And today we had easily a couple hundred people.
They're all here to catch a glimpse of the new birds. 2 young California condors raised for this northern Arizona release.
They come from Idaho, and they manage them up in the flight pen up on top of the Paria Plateau. They're up there for several weeks, and then they move them into the release pen for about a week and a half or 2 weeks before we actually release these birds. They're out there to get to see other condors flying around and kind of get used to the environment before they get released, so it's not just throwing them out. The way that the release works here is that the birds are in the release pen, and we, at a set time, which was 11 o'clock, we opened the gates we told the people up at the release site to open the gates, and they remotely open the gates so that they're not chasing the birds out, and we're letting the birds leave at their own will. And today it's a little bit windy, and the birds are not wanting to take their first flight in such a wind, so they're sitting in the release pen right now, still haven't decided to come out yet. So it's what we would call a soft release in in wildlife work. It's better to do that with all wildlife that we can, because you're not just throwing them out. They're not having to, evolve or die kind of a situation. They are having the leisure to come out on their own without stress and to figure things out without being having it forced upon them by us. And then when they do come out, the Peregrine Fund biologists are here to monitor their every movement for the next several weeks. They will be extremely well tracked by the Peregrine Fund biologists, and they will have essentially constant monitoring for the next several weeks until it's determined that they're doing really well or not. And if they're not doing really well, we may take them into captivity again just to see how they're, if we can't acclimate them to the environment a little better. But we've had a long history of really successful releases using this manner.
On average, we release about a dozen birds a year, and that's usually twofold more than hopefully we lose. And last year we only lost 3 birds, and so the addition of these 2 birds, we're getting close to maintaining that population. But ultimately our goal is to see that through birds released from the captive breeding program and birds that are produced in the wild, that we result in a self-sustaining population is our ultimate goal. Today we have 74 birds in the population, and yeah, our goal is 150, and to be reproductively self-sustaining. So last year, this last season, we had 12 pairs indicated by exposure. So as the population grows in age, they also grow in the number of breeding pairs. And obviously you have to produce more birds than you lose. So we're in that process of building that self-sustaining population. So one of the things we do, other than just releasing these birds, is we monitor them intensively. We have radio telemetry devices on the birds so we can track them by ground, and we also have some that have GPS transmitters. And what we're trying to learn is what's important to these birds for survival. What are the things that are causes of death? And within those things that cause death, are there any things that we can control? And so what we look at is the lead poisoning on the landscape as the condors come in after the hunting season, and we test their blood sample. We found that they had high levels of lead. So we started working with the department and hunters to eliminate that source of poisoning by using non-lead bullets. And it's been terribly effective with the big game hunting population on the Kaibab, over 80% participation for over 7 years now. Now it's just a matter of how do we get the rest of the hunters who might be out there hunting to use non-lead. So we're now talking to hunters of small game and varmint hunters, and so those ongoing programs to reveal the problems that this condor is having and asking for support is at the crux of recovery.
You can find out more about the recovery efforts for these amazing creatures on the Arizona Game and Fish Department website, 24/7 at azgfd.gov/condor.
Coming up, we'll take you to Lee's Ferry and see why it's such a magical place for anglers from all over the world.
Today we're at Lee's Ferry. Lee's Ferry is the start of the Grand Canyon if you're going to raft through the canyon. It's a world premiere fishery, a lot of rainbows, beautiful scenery.
Oh, it's a beautiful canyon.
Amazing.
Yeah.
This is my first ever trip here.
Once people discover it, they come back all the time.
This is going to be a regular stop, at least once a month.
So how is it? Is it picking up?
Yeah, the fishing's good. It's picking up. The last 3 years has been kind of tough, but this year we've caught some really good fish. It's good.
Our numbers are coming back, so we're expecting a really, really good fishing year this year.
I'm all excited. It's less than an hour and 5 fish so far. Beautiful fish. Let's go home, buddy. Yes, let him go home. Fishing Lee's Ferry is fantastic. Now time for another one.
I've got to go get that grill started, and that wraps up our show for today. Remember that your own deer or trout taste great off the grill. Remember to get out there and enjoy those Arizona wildlife views. Thanks for watching.